You know, if you've ever lived in a community with an HOA, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That little notice about the height of your grass or where you can park, these things can explode into massive legal battles. Today, we're diving deep into one of those fights that really gets to the heart of that classic neighborhood power struggle. So who really calls the shots? Is it the board of directors you vote for, or is it every single homeowner all together as a group? Well, that's the exact question at the center of this legal drama between one homeowner and his HOA. All right, let's get into it. Here's our game plan. We'll start with what sparked the whole fight. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the legal documents. We'll hear both sides of the story and then see how the judge ultimately settled it. And, most importantly, we'll talk about what this all means for you. Okay, so let's set the stage. On one side, you've got a homeowner, R.L. Whitmer. And on the other, you have the Hilton Casitas Council of Homeowners. That's the official name for his HOA. Their disagreement got so serious, it landed them in front of an administrative law judge. So what's the beef here? Well, Mr. Whitmer was arguing that a whole set of rules passed way back in 2016 was totally invalid. Why? Because he claimed the board of directors had absolutely no right to create them on their own. The HOA, of course, said, no way, we were completely within our rights. So, how in the world do you settle something like this? Well, it all comes down to the fine print in the community's founding legal documents. The entire case really hangs on the words written in two of these documents, and, you guessed it, which one gets the final say. First up, you have the most important document of all, the Declaration. People sometimes call it the CC&Rs. Just think of it like the Constitution for the entire neighborhood. It's the original contract, the supreme law of the land, and its authority is absolute. And here, this lays it all out, the legal pecking order. Based on Arizona law that was cited in this case, the Declaration sits right at the very top. So, if the bylaws say one thing, but the Declaration says something different, the Declaration always wins. This one idea, right here, is the bedrock of the homeowner's entire case. Okay, so let's dig into Mr. Whitmer's side of things. His whole argument is built on this simple idea. The Declaration gave the power to one group, but the board of directors just took it. And what's so cool is we have Mr. Whitmer's actual words from the hearing. He's pointing to the Declaration and saying, look, this document says the council is all 29 of us homeowners. And because of that, he argues, only those 29 homeowners acting together can make new rules. The board, which is just a handful of people, can't do it by themselves. And here it is, the conflict in black and white. You can see it clear as day. The Declaration, the Constitution, gives the power to adopt rules to the council. But the bylaws, which are lower on that pecking order, give the same power to the board of directors. If the pecking order is king, the Declaration has to win this fight. So the bottom line for Whitmer is this. The board's action was ultra vires. It's a fancy legal term that basically means they acted beyond their legal power. From his point of view, those 2016 rules were null and void the second they were written. It's a pretty clean, powerful argument, right? But hold on, because the HOA didn't just show up to argue about definitions. Oh no. They came in with a really smart two-pronged attack, designed to take Whitmer's case apart completely. So the HOA's first and honestly biggest argument had nothing to do with the Declaration or the bylaws. Instead, it was all about a number, 6, as in the 6-year statute of limitations for filing this kind of lawsuit in Arizona. And you can hear it right here from the HOA's lawyer. She basically said, look, even if he was right, he had 6 years from August 2016 to sue us. That deadline was August 19th, 2022. He missed it. End of story. But they didn't just leave it there. They came with a second argument, just in case. They said there isn't actually a conflict here at all. They used a legal idea called harmonization, which basically says courts should try to make documents work together to make them, well, live in harmony before declaring a conflict. Their argument was that the two sections actually cover different territory. The Declaration gives all the homeowners power over the big picture stuff, the council's rights and duties, but they said the bylaws give the board the power to manage the day-to-day operation of the property. So 2 different jobs, 2 different areas of power, no conflict at all. So the stage is set. You've got the homeowner with what looks like a slam-dunk contract argument, and you have the HOA with this killer 2-part defense. Everything now comes down to what the judge decides. And this is the real dilemma, right? Put yourself in the judge's shoes. Do you focus on the substance, who was actually right about who gets to make the rules, Or do you focus on the procedure? Was the lawsuit filed on time? Sometimes that second question is the only one that really matters. And this timeline just lays it all out with painful clarity. The rules were adopted in 2016. That 6-year clock started ticking, and it expired in 2022. But Mr. Whitmer didn't actually file his case until early 2024, more than a year too late. And there it is, right from the judge's final decision. She didn't rule on who was right or wrong about the rules. She didn't even interpret the documents. She ruled entirely on the deadline. She said he failed to file his claim within the 6-year period, so he's barred from making the claim now. And that was it. The final gavel came down. The verdict was simple and absolute. Case dismissed. All that argument about who had the power, it never even got decided. Why? Because legally speaking, he just waited too long. So, after all that, what does this courtroom drama really teach us? It's a pretty fascinating peek behind the curtain of the legal system, and there are some huge lessons here for any homeowner. I think the biggest takeaway here is kind of a surprise. Procedure is power. The when turned out to be way more important than the what. A simple deadline, just a technicality, was more powerful than the entire argument about the community's constitution. It's a huge reminder that in the legal world, deadlines are no joke. And it just goes to show you, the fight you think you're having isn't always the one that decides the outcome. And that really just leaves us with one final thought, one last question. This whole dispute, all the time and the money spent, it all came down to words written in a document years and years ago. So when was the last time you actually read the rules for your community? Because this case shows it's so important to know your rights and to act on them before that clock runs out.